Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have Holly here. No? Okay. So we are here representing the caucuses of the CBD, of the conventional biological diversity. And we would like to express some of our perspectives since there has been a bit of time since the text has come out. So I'm going to have here Ms. Bharat Colin from the CBD Alliance. Please, Bharat, do you want to start with your...
Thank you so much, Melina. Ladies and gentlemen, the present post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework should implement Convention on Biological Diversity, but it should not cherry-pick topics. The current text short on establishing robust international commitment from the parties to implement GBF. As a result, several concerns raised by civil society remain unresolved. Equity and justice are key to unlocking to implement the global biodiversity framework successfully. If we take from 1990 to 2015, 242 trillion US dollars have been used by developed countries from the developing world. But we don't have 1 billion US dollar to give to developing countries. Developed countries owe an ecological debt to provide necessary finance to developing countries in line with the legal obligations under the CBD. We cannot end up in a situation where 30% of the planet is being protected through financial resources earned through destroying 70% of the planet. Target 3 does not say clearly whether indigenous territories would be recognized where applicable just within the protected areas and OECMs, or actually fulfilling states' obligation to respect indigenous self-determination. Terms like nature-based solutions and biodiversity credits and offsets only weaken the global biodiversity framework. Ladies and gentlemen, the current presidency text of the Global Biodiversity Framework is looking more and more like great business framework. Here is why: failure to recognize, let alone address the root causes of the biodiversity crisis, which is a corporation-driven crisis. Two, failure to have any transformative actions and reverse the system that causes the biodiversity crisis. We are doing more of the sum. Third, failure of the governments to severe public interest. Government are no longer serving the public interest and instead are pandering to the needs of corporations. Justice has to be operationalized. There is no ambition without justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bharat, from this quick reality check, I suppose. And now I would invite Shruti Ajit from the Women Caucus. Shruti, please.
Thank you, Melina. So we from the Women Caucus, I'm honored to be representing the Women Caucus here. And these are some of the points that we find that are non-negotiable for us, and we hope that it's taken into account. One, the contribution of women and girls to biodiversity conservation and sustainable use must be recognized and effectively measured. We are not disempowered victims, but rather active shapers, guardians, and defenders of biodiversity. For second, we secure financial support for women in two ways: allocate specific and sufficient funding for the implementation of gender plan of action, as well as ensure women's direct access to resources. Third, accountability mechanisms should be defined so that parties respond to their decisions and impacts on biodiversity either directly or through their failure to regulate what happens within their jurisdictions, or both if either is provoked by their citizens. Fourth, gender responsive resource mobilization is crucial not only for the global biodiversity framework implementation, but also for all COP15 decisions. In this line, we do not agree to include biodiversity offsets and credits because they are false solutions with serious long term consequences. And lastly, all women and girls in their diversities should be empowered to engage effectively in the collaborative implementation of post 2020 GBF and its associated instruments, but not in an extractive way. Rather, when it comes to Indigenous women, it ensures their free, prior, and informed consent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shruti. And now we're going to have Josefa Tauli representing Gibbon, the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, and the Youth Caucus to the CBD. Josefa.
Thank you. My name is Josefa Tauli. I'm an Ibaloy Kangkanay Igorot and with the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. We consider it a key achievement that there is now a mandate for governments to ensure the participation, the access to justice, the access to information for Indigenous peoples and local communities, women, and youth, which is really unprecedented in biodiversity policy. Coming from a family of environmental defenders, I also really celebrate the clean text that is there on the full protection of environmental defenders. We are happy with the inclusion of intergenerational equity and rights-based approaches as key guiding principles for the implementation of this framework, including the recognition of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. We also note the progress in further advancement in the recognition of the key role that Indigenous peoples and local communities play in stewarding biodiversity and in the progress that was made to protect our rights in the face of conservation. These are all things that we need to be kept in the to until we reach the finish line. Young people also have seen that and have emphasized that education is a key approach that needs to be recognized as a tool towards living in harmony with nature. And we are happy of its inclusion in this framework. This framework as it is now is really it reflects the culmination of 4 years of sustained efforts from civil society to make our voices heard despite the many challenges. Our collective efforts as Indigenous peoples and local communities, as youth, as women's groups and grassroots NGOs has produced many elements that can really be considered landmark victories in breaking the conservation silo that has for a long time ignored the links between environmental damage and social inequalities. However, we are disappointed by the lack of regulation for businesses who need to be held accountable for the destruction that they create. We are also concerned that many parts of the framework open the door to false solutions like biodiversity offsets and credits that could intensify the loss of irreplaceable ecosystems and human rights violations. There's a lack of financial ambition that doesn't recognize historical responsibilities and financial obligations by developed countries to developing countries. And these are weak points of the framework that will undermine its implementation. It will remain to be seen how much of these victories will be measured and implemented, but we will work hard to make sure that the wins that we have gotten through collective action by all of us here becomes a reality. We will work to make sure that it will mandate governments, duty bearers to respect and protect our inherent and interdependent rights. We will work to make sure that it will impact real people and real lives in a positive way. We hope that it can be an instrument that we will use to fight against injustice, against eco-anxiety, against gender inequalities, against evictions, against intergenerational inequities, and against the violence that we face every day of our lives, no matter the outcome.
Thank you so much, Selfa, Shruti, and Bharat. And now, we would like to take some questions from the floor, if there are any.
My name is Emma Roman. I'm from Namibia. I'm a conservancy manager. I just want a question to the first speaker. I do understand there are challenges in target 3, 30 by 30%. And also you said that the indigenous areas are not recognized as protected areas. I know in some countries, the density of the population also plays a role. In my country is that in our model in Namibia is that even in the traditional boundaries where we are considered as conservancies, we also have areas that we exclusively zoned as wildlife areas where people are not living, no farming is done there. I just want you to know how do you assess that model? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that first point is that at this moment, indigenous people land cover is at least 1/4 of the terrestrial Earth. That is overlapping around 37% of the terrestrial protected areas. So there has been like no proper reports yet, but still there are some assessments. At least I think 50% of the protected areas under the control of IPLCs are intact, and a lot of these areas which are controlled by indigenous people around the world have been like under better management systems. Now what we have been doing is taking this taking like for years and thousands of years, they are the one who have been transferring this amazing knowledge of our biodiversity. Now if we take out and only believe in the taxonomic knowledge by creating, of course you need such type of areas, but at the same time you cannot eliminate them out of this context. So it's not a challenge just in Namibia. I think in every developing countries right now, the challenge has been there. Anyone wants to take that?
Perhaps if you could just repeat a bit louder the question. Yeah.
The question is just, my issue is just on the issue of, we have traditional boundaries, certain land of a certain piece of land which is under traditional leaders. And in that specific area, we are considered as different communal conservancies. I am from Torah Conservancy, I'm the manager there. In my conservancy, we only have 40% for farming, and then we have 60% for wildlife only. Nobody is going for farming there. That's what my issue is. So in that case, that 60%, what about the 60%? Can it not be recognized as a protected area? Thank you.
I think you touched quite a very concrete point, I think, to be honest. And I think that's one of the concerns that the whole kind of rights holders community have brought against the percentages, right? And not only the percentages of land that is going to be under protection, but what is going to be the modalities of the protection, what are going to be the criteria, and then what are going to be the added benefit, and how this is all going to be accounted as the 30% that needs to be protected. So I think perhaps maybe Seth Barat, do you also want to touch upon the modalities? Yeah.
On the percentage part, I can share some statistics. Like 32% is already under protected area and OECMs. Now in target 3, if you look, it says 30%. So now you understand which is already existing, which is nearly more than the recognized under the target. So where does this number is coming? So we need to see, there is no actual study on this. the global study on this entire thing. Like we need only this much of percentage of land under protection. But I mean, maybe my colleagues can answer.
Yeah. Just I'm not going to go into numbers because I mean numbers can be manipulated however you want it. But one of the things that we can definitely do, or all of us, including you, sir, can do is also create pressure systems, pressure groups for asking our governments to hold themselves accountable to recognize ICCAs, community conserved areas, that can definitely then include them as part of, because community conserved areas is something that is a recognized category in terms of governance systems, and that can definitely then allow for it to be recognized as a protected area, but under the governance of the community. So and therefore we as all of us as people also can ask parties, ask our countries to have defined legislations, if we don't already have them, to have the recognition of community conserved areas within each of our countries.
Safa?
Just to add and complement, we have for a long time been also pushing for this target to recognize diverse governance types and to ensure that this is monitored, keeping in mind how different areas should be managed and governed. And part of this is also recognizing the third pathway, which is through recognizing that Indigenous peoples and local communities steward their land and achieve conservation outcomes in this way. And this is also another thing that needs to continue to be kept in this framework until the finish line.
Thank you. Any other questions for our panelists? Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for your presence here, and like we end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.